Welcome to the Home Team Sacramento podcast. I'm your host, Josh Sakimoto. With us today is our friend, speaker, author, and communication expert, Dwight Taylor Sr. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Josh? Everything is good over here, man. We talked a little bit off air. It's been one of those days, but it's been high value and very productive. So this is a great way to end this part of my day by being on here with you.
I love it, man. And just to kind of let people behind the scenes, we actually recorded for my other podcast yesterday. So
yes, sir.
I'm getting some motivation, inspiration, encouragement. Back-to-back days. So I'm doing really well, man. This is awesome.
That's what's up. That's good stuff.
So I know we've talked about this before. We've done quite a few podcasts together. If anybody's listened to those podcasts, this may be redundant, but for anybody who's new, or maybe someone who doesn't know Dwight, tell us a little bit about your athletic background, your coaching background, and how you got to where you are today.
Definitely. And that's a great question. So my athletic background is I played multiple sports when I was in elementary and junior high. So I played baseball, basketball, soccer, and I did karate. And so those were multiple things that I did all throughout 5 years old, I say all the way up till about 14. Really entering high school. And then high school, it shifted. It was only basketball. Like that was the only thing that I ended up playing in high school. And really one of my biggest regrets is playing, and I don't have too many regrets, but I regret not playing baseball in high school. You know, I went to Bishop O'Dowd High School in Oakland, California. And at that time, here's exactly what was said to me. I find out that there's baseball tryouts and I'm excited about it. And some juniors and seniors, I'm a freshman at the time, some juniors and seniors, they're like, "Oh, you thinking about trying out for baseball?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been playing my whole life." And they were like, "Black people don't play baseball at this school."
Yeah.
And that was all I needed to hear, being not a strong-minded 14-year-old at the time. I made a decision based on that and didn't play. And that is one of my biggest regrets because I was way better at baseball than I was at basketball. I'm a lefty. I threw a nasty curveball, circle change, knuckleball. I could hit left and right. I could drag bunt. I was fast, so I could steal bases. But so that was that. So I ended up playing basketball at Bishop O'Dowd, and then I ended up running track at Fresno State University. So that's my athletic background. When I was younger, but then with coaching, I've been coaching basketball since I was 19 years old. I started coaching at the YMCA, really coaching my younger cousin who's 9 years younger than me. And from that point on, I just knew that not only do I love playing, but I love coaching. I really just love motivating people to be their best. Yeah. And basketball just happened to be the vehicle that I could easily find myself in that space and really help people be great in whatever they wanted to be great in. If that was a point guard trying to get their handle better, if that was a center trying to work on their post up, I always wanted to help them in that. But more so, let me find out who you are as a person, who you're trying to be, and let me help you become that best version. That led to fast forward 2015. I ended up being a middle school basketball coach at Einstein Middle School out here in Sacramento, California. The second year of me coaching, took my team to the city championships. We ended up losing to Sutter Middle School, which still irks me. We ended up losing, but prior to the 2 years that I coached, they didn't have a winning season. Literally the year before I started coaching, they were 0-14. And so being able to come in third place my first year coaching, then second place. And so that's really what it looks like for me as a coach. I'm not coaching basketball anymore just because my boys are out of school and my daughter's trying to figure out what she wants to do. And so whatever she figures that out, it might be volleyball, man. I might be coaching volleyball after I learn it because that's something she wants to play, but she also is a little bit into soccer too. So,
okay,
man.
That's awesome, man. And I believe you and I were talking a little bit about your that loss you took in that championship game. And I believe it was against one of our former guests, JT Roberts. Is that correct?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Roberts.
Shout out to Coach JT. They gave me that L. They gave me that L. I love that guy, but I wasn't rocking with him at that time.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, that's one of the things we talk about on this podcast, because one of the things we say is that, hey, even though we wear different jerseys, we're all a part of this home team in Sacramento and the surrounding areas. But that being said, we are still competitive and we still like to
100%.
win and we still hate losing. And
Yeah.
so, especially when it's someone that you know and you're familiar with, it's like, oh, it just makes it worse.
Right. Right.
Way worse,
1000%.
way worse. But no, that's cool, man. And it's, you have a really interesting perspective, I think, because,
Mm.
and I'm sure a lot of people we've had on this podcast have a similar perspective, but you're obviously a speaker, you're an author, so you
Yeah.
interact with student athletes all the time.
Yeah.
You're a father. So,
Yeah.
like you said, at one point I know you were heavy into the youth sports world because of where
Yeah.
your son's playing sports. And then pretty soon you'll be back in that world because of your daughter.
Yes.
And then you're a coach too. So
Yeah.
you've seen this from a bunch of different aspects, a parent, a coach, and obviously a speaker.
Yeah.
How much has all of that shaped your viewpoint and your perspective when it comes to communicating effectively with all of those different people? Because I mean, you're interacting with all of these people
Yeah.
at different points during the day. Like, how much has that, like, I guess, impacted you positively when it comes to, impact or communicating with those groups?
Yeah. That's a great question. So the first thing I think about is perspective taking. Like, because I come from so many different perspectives, I can look at it from different perspectives. So if I'm coaching, or when I was coaching, I'm not just the coach at the time. I'm also taking on the perspective of the parent who wants their child to play more than the other people on that court. Why? Because I've been that parent who wants my child to play more than such and such who I don't think is playing as well. So I'm able to do that. I'm also able to motivate, right? I'm also able to do that because I'm a motivational speaker. So I'm able to encourage, empower, inspire, uplift, and challenge in that way. So I'm able to see it from that perspective. And then just coaching, my philosophy on coaching is I coach the person first and the athlete second. Like, I want to see my student athletes be the very best versions of themselves as human beings. Because here's the reality, Josh. When I was coaching basketball, if one of my players or all of my players ended up going to the NBA, they might have a career like a LeBron James where they're playing close to their 40s or Dirk Nowitzki, right? Where they're playing. But if you live to be 80 years old, you still have 40 more years of still being a human being. Yeah. Right. And so I want to make sure that I'm coaching that person first. I want to make sure that I'm coaching the human being first and then the athlete after, because I don't know what your career is going to look like. I don't know if you're going to make it to even play freshman basketball. I don't know if you're going to make it to D1, D2, D3 in college, or if you'll make it to overseas or the NBA. But I want to make sure that you have a solid foundation on the person you are. So in all of those three perspectives, I'm always looking at how do I empathize with not only the student athletes, but how do I empathize with the parents? And empathy is literally the glue to any type of effective communication. I can't communicate effectively with you if I'm not willing to step in your shoes and see things how you see it. And so I wanted to always make sure I did that with students. I wanted to make sure I always did that with parents. And I also wanted to make sure that I did that even with the people that we don't think about when we're coaching, which is the referees, right? And I talk about that a lot with coaches that I coach. Like, I coach coaches on how to effectively communicate within their space. And most people don't even think about the refs. But the refs are the ones who get the worst treatment when things are not going our way.
Right.
But here's the reality. However we are treating the referee, we are showing that example to those that we're coaching. Yep. We're also showing that example to those who are in the stands who are cheering us on. And so how we treat a ref has a lot to do with how our players, as well as the families of our players. And so I'm always teaching empathy. Like, let's be empathetic to everyone so that we can communicate at the highest level.
I love that, man. I love what you said about the refs, because I mean, obviously I don't know if you saw the video, and I forgot where it happened, but there was a ref after a game that basically got jumped by 5 players.
Yeah.
Do you remember where that was at?
I didn't even look too deep in it. I just seen it real quick. And that was it.
Yeah. And obviously they were communicating something to him.
Oh, 100%.
Not what you want them to communicate, but there was definitely communication going on. It was an unfortunate situation, but I 100% agree. I feel like there's been multiple coaches that have been on this show and other podcasts that I've done where they said, man, the rate of referees like dropping out and not doing it anymore is way high, because they're like, they just don't want to deal with all of the nonsense that comes with being a ref. And I think the thing that people, like you said, people don't consider, hey, how do you communicate with a referee and how it affects everybody else? But I think another thing that they don't consider is like, what age is this referee you're talking to? Because sometimes in youth sports, you have a kid that's like 12, anywhere between 12 and 18 years old.
Yeah.
And they're talking to that person or that kid like they're a grown adult.
Yeah.
And then there's times when you're dealing with grown adults, a man or a woman, and they're communicating to them like they're a child.
Right.
It's a very bizarre thing. So I love the fact that you're teaching coaches how to communicate like that, because I mean, you're a leader, and I think sometimes we think as coaches that we're just leading the athletes in the field, but you, like you said, you're leading the parents, you're leading the crowd that's watching the game. They're going to follow your lead and how to interact with the referees. So if you're not doing it effectively or in a positive way, I mean, the whole thing can go sideways. We've seen it before where there's, fans rush the court or the field and want to get into a fight with this referee. Like, what are we doing? Sometimes it goes back to how the coach interacted with them.
Right. And so just to piggyback on that real quick, right? Like, for me, you asked me about my different perspective and different lenses that I see through. As a motivational speaker, I am taught and trained to know my audience.
Yeah.
So if I'm communicating with a referee, then I need to know the very things that you just said. Okay, this referee is probably 16, 17, 18 years young, or this referee is older. But one of the things that I do so I can make sure I know my audience is I always try to talk to the refs before the game. And on a personal level. Why? Because they're still human beings.
Right.
And I still want to be sure that, as my grandfather would say, I leave them better than I found them.
Yeah.
No matter if I feel like they're not making the best calls or maybe I didn't think they were as experienced, they're still people and human beings first, just like I said with the players. And so I want to make sure that I'm connecting with them. So then I have a better understanding. I might talk to a ref that's 35, 40 years old, but this is their first year. Okay, well, I'm going to have even more empathy towards that. But if I didn't know that, if I didn't take time to find out my audience or the people that I'm interacting with, it could all go downhill very quickly.
Right. 100%. No, I love that. And we could do a whole podcast on just referees and the interaction with the referees and how that whole thing goes. But we have other things I want to talk about. So, man, going back to the parent coach communication. Yeah. I feel like that's huge. And like you said, we're going to keep saying it, but you've seen it from both sides.
Yeah.
Like you said, you've been the parent that wants your kid to get more playing time or questions the coach's decisions. And then you've been on the side where you're the coach and people are coming up to you and saying, hey, why'd you do this? Or why'd you do that?
Yeah.
This is a kind of a big question. I'm not looking for a specific answer necessarily, but like, what is the best way for a coach and a parent to interact? Because that's, I think, something you hear from coaches a lot is like, man, I love coaching, but one of the challenging parts, and same with teachers, right? One of the most challenging parts is the parent interaction, because a lot of times it can go in such a negative way if there's a disagreement. Like, what are some ideas or tips you would have for both coaches and parents to make that interaction the best it possibly can be?
Great question. So from a coach's perspective, I want to know what the parents desire. I want to know what they want. I want to know what they want out of their kid playing on my team. I want to know what they want over the long haul. I want to know what they want out of a coach. What does a great coach mean to you? What's your definition of that? Because if I can identify that, then I can have a conversation with you on, I don't know if I fit that mold, right? Which means I don't know if I'm the best coach for your child. Or I can have some understanding and say, okay, I get that. And I think that does fit with who I am. Or I could say, let me see if I can work something through with that definition you gave me. Now, the other side of that is then I articulate clearly what my definition of a great coach is, right? And now you've articulated it. I've articulated. Now we can try to find a happy medium if need be and get some understanding. My biggest thing is people want to be understood. And we want to understand. Like, I want your listeners right now to understand what I'm saying. At the same time, I hope that I'm articulating in a way that I can feel understood if I ever came across their path, right? And so once we can get some understanding, which is what I believe is foundational when it comes to effective communication, then we can be on the same playing field. A parent will tell you what they desire. We just have to be willing to ask that quality question. The other piece that I would say when it comes to coach and parent relationship is to be very clear and concise up front.
Yeah.
Most coaches are not communicating clearly or concisely up front. most coaches end up having to communicate with the parent, and it might be a little bit challenging, is because we're doing intervention work when we should have done the preventative work and asked the quality questions. It's just like dating, right? Like you can literally find out what you need to find out if you ask the right questions at the right time, in the right way, with the right ideas and thoughts in mind, so that you're not going 4 months dating someone and now you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even know this. Well, you would have known it if you would have taken the time in the front to ask those type of questions. Here's the reality, Josh. Not too many people have been taught enough and feel like they've learned enough on how to ask curious, creative, and quality questions. And so when you're not taught that, or you don't know how to do that, or that is something that's a little bit foreign to you, it's not going to be top of mind. You're going to go with what you know. And most people know how to make statements. They don't know how to ask quality questions. And so for any coach that's out there right now who may be struggling with this, I would say before your next season, or before you get a new group of kids, or right in the beginning, ask them some questions. Not that you would ask if you're dating someone, but ask some questions that you want to know up front, so that you all can get that understanding up front. You can be clear, they can be clear, and we can at least get some understanding before we get too far down this pathway. And it's very hard to try to circle back or to have that intervention piece. So I'm big on preventative measures. So asking quality questions is humongous, and then just getting some understanding.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I just want to point this out. I'm sure that some people that are listening to this right now completely tuned you out after you talked about dating, because they're like, does Dwight actually have a dating course? Because that might be something worth investing into. So I'm
telling you, man, I have, listen, my not even dating life, but just me as being a husband, it's very colorful. And I use that because that's a very positive way for me to say it can be challenging at times, right? And so the very things that I'm sharing, I'm not saying that I've arrived or anything. I'm just saying that I've seen the similarities of, even with my players, right? I want to know about my players before I even start coaching you in the game of basketball. I need to know, why are you here on this court? Why are you coming to play for me? Like, what is your end goal? Because if I can find out what somebody desires or their end goal, then I can ask myself quality questions to see if I can even help you get to that point. I would much rather tell you, I'm not the person to help you. I can find somebody who can. A lot of coaches, and I used to be that coach, we can be prideful. Yeah. Right. We can be prideful and think that we're the savior and we're the end all be all. But if you want to be an effective coach, then become an effective communicator. But if you want to do that, then let's start with just getting to know the audience that we're in front of.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about the player to coach communication, right? Especially if it's a coach that you're not familiar with. If you're a new coach, you're coming into a situation. Yeah. One, you have to communicate in such a way where you gain the respect of your players, because if you don't gain the respect, then one, they're not going to listen to you, and you're trying to teach them a very specific skill. Yes. So there's a lot of different elements to communicating with athletes, right? Because they're not going to listen to you. So why would they listen to you when you're trying to correct or improve their technique or their skill set? And even if you get past that point where they trust you, there's, like you said, even with the coaches and athletes, there's that pride there where it's like, Coach, I'm really good at what I do. Come on. Why would I keep listening to you? Like, I respect you. I'm willing to listen to you, but like, you also have to then convince them to, change or look at their sport or skill with a different mindset. A lot of different elements to it. And you're not just dealing with one athlete. It's not just one-on-one communication all the time. Yeah. It sometimes is, but like you're communicating to a group, you're communicating to an individual, so it's small group communication, it's individual communication, it's interpersonal, like we talked about yesterday. And then also intrapersonal. There we go. Which I think is an interesting thing for a coach, because you're competing in these environments where the level of passion and intensity is super high. So for a coach and any assistant coach or anybody who's involved on the team, how important is that intrapersonal communication when sometimes the stakes are really high and the intensity is that high? Like, how important is it for a coach to take the time, step back, and focus on that part of their communication skills?
It's the most important.
Yeah.
Because what's in you eventually comes out. Yeah. Right. And when we talk about intrapersonal, that's your self-talk. What are you saying to yourself in these moments? Because what you're saying to yourself is going to then come out externally. Yeah. Right. And so one of the things that I coach coaches on is continue to ask yourself why and what. That's it. Just ask yourself why and what internally. Why am I feeling this way right now? Okay, well, because I've been teaching this thing and my players are still not getting it. Okay, what way do you want to communicate that? Do you want to communicate it in one that might result in a positive fashion, or do you want to communicate that in a way that's not going to be positive? Like, you have the power to do that. And that's what I want to share with those listening today is, don't forget about the self-power that you have. Like, there's not a lot of things in this world that we can literally control. But what we can control is how we respond, right? Right now, you could say something to me, Josh, that I might not agree with. I might even get offended, right, with, but I have the power to respond well to it or not respond well. And so one of the things that I'm telling coaches and parents and even student athletes is, you can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond to what happens to you. And so that comes back to your intrapersonal communication. What do you feel about this situation? What is this situation causing to stir up in you that's going to either cause you to respond well or not respond well? And so when we get back to the self-talk and the intrapersonal, it's literally why and what. Continue to take yourself through that as often as you can, and then you'll get to the heart of the matter. Right. And most times when we get to the heart of the matter, and we want to have a positive effect, we're going to do what's best for those that we're serving, period. Yeah, right. But when we don't get to the heart of the matter, we're going to do what's best for us. And sometimes what's best for us is not best for the group.
Right. That's really good, because I feel like something we've talked to coaches about before is, obviously, if you say, let's take a football team, for example, you have a big squad. You have a decent amount of coaches and assistant coaches that are a part of your team.
Yeah.
I feel like part of what a coach needs to understand when it comes to how they communicate with their players is they have to understand that you're not going to be able to maybe have the strongest communication with, even if you do everything right, as far as communication, you may not have the strongest connection to every single athlete on their team. They may not vibe with your personality. Not that they don't like you. They just don't connect with you the strongest, even if you're doing everything right. So I feel like part of a coach's understanding of how to communicate with their players is, hey, you know what? Maybe I have a wide receiver. I'm not connecting with that wide receiver to the best of my ability. Maybe it's the wide receivers coach who has the strongest connection. And so it kind of goes back to that pride thing, right? It's like you have to be able to give up some of that control and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna love on this player. I'm gonna give my very best to this athlete. But I understand that if there's something that we really need to communicate, a really important message, it may come from this person more effectively.
Come on.
And so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that when it comes to, especially, like I said, bigger squads kind of have to deal with that more?
Yeah, I agree. Now, when I think about that, I think about parenting. Right. There are things that I've told my sons when it comes to basketball. And I can have one of my best friends tell them the exact same thing and they listen. And I'm like, oh, man, did they think dad didn't know? The reality is I just wasn't the right messenger for that message. Right. And so because I'm very intentional about getting to know my kids or know my student athletes or know the fans or know the parents, I'm going to get to know them as well as I can by asking quality questions to see who is the best messenger for the message that I need to get across. Because at the end of the day, I just need the message to get across. It doesn't have to be me. Most times I don't even want it to be me. I want it to be from someone that you receive information well from. Right. Which means we have to remove ego, which means we have to remove pride, which means our self-talk has to be one that says, we just want to see the best things happen for our student athletes. So whoever that is that can communicate that message, let's get that person involved. And here's the other thing, right? If there are any coaches struggling with that, even on a big team, although we might not be able to reach everyone, we should give our perfect effort to try to reach them. And one of the ways that I share with coaches, I share with teachers, I share with principals, I share with leaders of major corporations is, here's a hack. Ask your players or ask those that you're leading to share with you their 25 top dreams, 25 dreams, right? Some people are going to be like, I can't even think of 3, Dwight, but really push in and get them to identify their dreams. Once you get this information, here's the crazy thing. Let's say that you're coaching 25 weeks a year, right? Almost half a year. Well, each interaction I have with the player, I can start that new interaction with a new dream. And here's one of the easiest ways for me to engage. And I'm not engaging based on Dwight. I'm engaging based on you. And I'm not just engaging based on you. I'm engaging based on something that is actually something that excites you, something that's a dream of yours. So imagine a student telling me, or a student athlete telling me 25 of their dreams. And every Wednesday at practice, I'm connecting with that student, or throughout that day, or with another student on their dream. And that's the first. I'm not talking about what plays we need to run. I'm not talking about let's do sprints. I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm saying, hey man, did you see that TikTok on Australia? I know you really want to go to Australia. Boom. I've instantly engaged with them at their level, at something that they really have a passion for and a desire. Now, anything that was any guards that were up, or anything that may have caused them to be in a negative posture, we have a better opportunity to now reach them where we need to reach them. Right. Here's the thing. If we can stop trying to be interesting and be more interested in people, things will change. Most times we're just trying to be interesting. We're trying to tell people about us. I did that as a 19, 20, 21-year-old coach. I'm over here trying to tell them, oh, I played basketball at this and I did this. And these kids didn't care. What they cared about was me being interested in them and what they wanted to do. So for any coaches, any parents, any people, any leaders listening, let's start being more interested than trying to be interesting.
That's really good. Yeah, it's really good, especially now, right, with social media. I mean, how many times, Sports Center, ESPN's, IG account, they'll run those inspirational stories from either a college coach or a high school coach, or, someone that has like this great, post-game speech. And then, I feel like sometimes we want to do the same thing, which is understandable because we're inspired by what that person did. But like you said, I think we can definitely get lost in that for sure. And like you said, become more focused on being interesting than interested. Yeah. And that's a great way of putting it. I like that a lot. A lot.
Man. And another piece, and then we can keep moving. My grandfather, he said a long time ago, people don't care about what you know till they know that you care. But he said, Dwight, I want you to add a layer to that. So people don't care about what you know till they know that you care, but people won't know that you care until you show that you care. It's like one thing for me to assume that you know that I care about you. It's another thing for me to intentionally show it every single day. That lets you know that I'm interested. That lets you know that I see you. That lets you know that I value you. So then when it's time for me to give you some great information or even some correction, the connection is always there. Yeah. It's already there, right? Because I've been interested this whole time. And here's what I believe. And this is one man's perspective. Correction without connection leads to rejection.
That's good.
We're trying to correct or change something and we haven't even connected. So yeah, people are going to reject. I mean, think about us as adults. If I don't have a connection with you, I might not take the information that you're going to give me, no matter how great it is, because we don't have any connection.
Right.
Now, especially if you're trying to correct me on something. Oh yeah, It's not happening.
Yeah. It's like, hey, Dwight, I have some ideas about your business. Like, what?
Yeah. I don't even know you. I don't even know you.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And that's what we've talked about a lot on this podcast is, I think sometimes there's this idea that that correction is a bad thing. And it's like, no, I've always felt like if you truly love your players, then you're going to have to at some point correct what they're doing, whether it be something they're doing on the field as far as their skill set, or maybe it's something like a behavioral thing as far as the culture of the team. But if you love your players, you also have that connection with them, like to your point. So 100% agree with that, man. I love how you put that too. It's such a simple thing, but such a powerful thing at the same time. And I think it can be a game changer for a lot of coaches and their assistant coaches as far as connecting with their athletes. So a couple of things that is, again, going back to the connection, excuse me, and how we connect with our athletes. Again, if you look at sports, it's a very interesting thing when it comes to connecting and communicating a message with the athletes, because people have different natural styles. We've all, I'm sure you've seen it, Dwight. I'm sure you've seen Last Chance U. That's not probably the best example of how a coach should communicate or the mindset of what a coach should do. With the exception of I haven't seen the last season, but the one with the basketball coach, I can't remember his name. That's probably a little better example of how to communicate with your athletes. But, the first couple of years with the football coaches, brutal. They're just, yelling and screaming at their athletes. Now, I've heard from some guys, they prefer a coach who does that. And they want a coach that gets in their face, is grabbing their face mask and yelling at them where their veins popping out of their neck. And then other guys are like, man, I would shut down. Like, I need a coach who's going to put my arm around me and say, hey, you've got this. It's interesting. Like how it's a big question, but like, how do you deal with that? Because a coach is going to be faced again, if you have a big squad, you're probably going to have athletes that respond to different ways of communicating. Um, if you're a louder person that gets more intense,
Yeah.
like how do you deal with that? Because that might be your natural thing. And it's not even not all the time. It's not always a negative thing where you're an angry coach. It's just like you're loud and you like to get intense. I mean, there was a video
Yeah.
I saw the other day where the coach was basically fighting all his athletes and they loved
I
it.
think I seen it. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
saw that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he basically has one of his like his running back in a headlock
Yes.
and he's like, hitting him
Yeah.
on the helmet. I'm like, what is going on? It's like, oh, he's
Yeah.
getting him amped up.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that as a coach? Because I imagine that could be potentially a really frustrating thing if some of your athletes don't vibe with the style that you have, but you still need to
Yeah.
communicate with them. Like you still need to
100%.
get your message across, but they may not, vibe with your natural way of doing things. It's a long question, but like, how do you deal with a situation like that?
Out the gate, ask your players the question. what type of coaching works best for you, right? And maybe you have to give them some guiding points because they may not know. But hey, do you like a coach that's in your face? And that's how he or she does it. Do you like a coach that is very reserved and laid back? Do you like a coach that's somewhere in the middle? Do you like a coach to just let you do what you do and then correct you later on? Do you want a coach who micromanages everything that you do? All we have to do is ask questions, literally.
Simple.
Like, here's the thing. Most people try to assume too much instead of just ask what they need. And a coach might be like, oh man, that's a lot to do in practice. Well, don't do it in practice. Do it before practices even start. Put out a survey and let them fill it out. And then you be intentional about taking the time to read through, okay, this is what my player said to me. And then as the coach, it's up to you to find out what's the best way to reach each individual. Like if you're going to be a coach, then it's up to you to figure out how to reach 80, 60, 15, 10 players. If that's not something that you're up to, you shouldn't be coaching. I'm going to just keep it solid. Yeah. Like you shouldn't be coaching if you're not willing to reach people where they are, especially these students that you desire to have their respect and for them to do the very things that you need them to do to be successful. And so I'm always telling coaches before a season starts, just ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can think of. If you need some help asking questions, reach out to me. I believe that I am the number one question asker in the world. And we can easily find out information just by asking that simple question. I know this. My oldest son, he does not need me yelling at him in a way that he doesn't feel is positive, but he does want me to yell at him to get him moving. So I have to think, okay, all right, how do I need to say this in a yelling, motivational way, but not like a yelling, degrading way? He still needs the yelling. He needs that. He needs me to get fired up and get where my younger son, he doesn't need me yelling at him at all. It don't matter if it's positive or if it's negative. He's like, man, just talk to me. Like, I just need you to be more level-headed. Well, if I didn't know that and I just decided to be this loud, rah-rah, even if it's positive, I might get to my older son, but I won't get to my younger son with this information. Well, the best thing I need to do is go, okay, can I fill that void or fill that need for my son? Or do I need this assistant coach? Or do I need to just take time and go, hey, let's figure out a communication style that can be a happy medium so that we can continue to move forward. But it starts with knowing your players, and you can't know them unless you ask quality questions. Stop assuming. That's what I had to tell myself. Stop assuming, Dwight. I don't know everything, and everybody's different. So hopefully that can help someone out there.
I think it will. No, I love that.
Yeah,
and
man.
I think kind of going along the same lines of assuming, obviously we're here in Sacramento, home team, Sacramento, all the surrounding areas. It's a very diverse city.
Yeah.
You can go, I mean, the culture, the city of Folsom High School, very different when you go across town to Burbank High School.
Yeah.
You go from Placer High School up in the hills down to, I don't know, Bella Vista. Very different. And you pick any school you want, like it's going to be very different at those schools. The culture is different. The city is different, where the economic status of families in those areas is different. So like, how important is it for coaches? Because obviously we love, supporting the home team and everybody who's competing in it and all the coaches who are doing great things. I always feel like it's great when a team, doesn't matter what sport, any sports team for that school in that area, connects with the community. So I guess kind of a twofold question. How important is it for a coach to make connection to the community a part of what they do as a team's culture? And then how important is it for a coach to understand and feel and be a part of that community to better understand their athletes? Because I imagine it could go sideways real quick if a coach comes into an environment and has no idea the background of the city, has no idea of the social economic status of those families in those cities. They might be expecting something from those athletes and their families that may not be practically possible.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you have to be very aware of those things to really understand how to communicate best with a culture in that city. So like I said, kind of a two-part question, but like how important is it for a coach to understand all of that and then also be involved in the community?
Yeah, great question. So it's extremely important from my perspective. Here's the reality. Some people don't think it's important. And I'm not here to tell them if it is or if it isn't. But for me, it's extremely important because, again, I'm building great people. And great people live in communities, right? It's not just a basketball player in the community or the football player in the community or soccer or baseball. No, it's a life. A human being lives in this community or is involved in this community. So it would only be of best interest for me to make sure that I'm connecting to this space where this person dwells. Come on. Like it's about connection, right? It's about relationship. Yeah. And I've said this to you before, better communicators equal better relationships. Well, if I have a great relationship with the family of this player, if I have a great relationship with the mentors of this player, if I have a great relationship with the 7-Eleven that's down the street from the school, so that if anyone is acting up in here, hey, let me know. And right, that type of connection is humongous. And I use that specific example because when I coached at Einstein, there's a 7-Eleven that's in walking distance. And I made sure that I knew the owners of this 7-Eleven. I knew the workers. So I said, hey, if you ever have any problem with my boys, let me know. But also, if you see them doing something great, let me know as well, because they're a part of this community as well. Here's the crazy thing. Because I did this, and I'm not saying that this happens, but I'm telling you what happened. Because I did this, I ended up going into the 7-Eleven. At one point, it's like, hey, we're doing a fundraiser because we're trying to get some new warm-ups. This 7-Eleven donated $500. Wow. Not because they cared anything about basketball, but they ended up having a relationship with the boys because I made it a priority.
Yeah.
To have that relationship. I would bring my boys in there and introduce them so they could see that face-to-face interaction. So when they came back in, it's a positive experience. And so I'm really big on community just in general, but even more so, any coach, I'm going to encourage any coach out there to get to know the community that your players are in, because they're in that community longer than they're going to be coached by you. And they were in that community before you even got there, right? And so that's what I'll say on that piece. I can't remember what the other part of that question was, but
I think, I mean, understanding, that's, first of all, it's great, but understanding the culture of the team, because I mean, you might go into primarily like Black neighborhood, right? Yeah. Or a primarily Latino neighborhood, or primarily white neighborhood, and we just know, like, there's different ways that things are done. There's a different culture there. And maybe it's a really diverse culture where you have different backgrounds, different ethnicities and races that you're coaching. Yeah. And so, again, the way you communicate is going to be a little bit different in all those areas. And I think sometimes, and I don't have nobody's that comes to mind. I wouldn't say their name anyways, but I'm sure you have some coaches that's like, man, you have an incredible coach and this school's going to hire this coach. But they come into this environment thinking that the methods and the philosophy they have, or the way they communicate, is going to work. Right. But these kids are like, you're not from here. Like, you don't know what we've come from. You don't know what our families go through every single day. Like, dude, why would we listen to you?
Exactly.
Like, I don't even care about, the sports side of it. Like, we're just not going to listen to you in general. Right. And so I think it seems like the coaches that are most successful take the time to understand the backgrounds, take time to understand the culture that they're stepping into. And then they adapt, they're flexible, they understand, not that the core of what they do is different, but they understand there's certain things that I need to change, or the way I communicate needs to change because I'm stepping into a different culture that I'm not a part of. So when it comes to that, how do you go about doing that? Like, how do you best step into an environment that maybe you're not from, but you can also have a tremendous impact?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record. And this is why I just believe we make these type of situations more difficult than they need to be.
Sure.
I'm going to say, number one, be more interested. Be more interested. Like, go in there wanting to learn, wanting to know, wanting to ask questions. That's number one. And then two, once you get that information, you can be more empathetic, right? You can begin to be a great perspective taker and place yourself in the shoes of these student athletes and see how they view this world that you are now stepping into. See how they even view you. I would literally, if I'm coming to a new school, I'm going to sit down with families, with my student athletes and say, what's the first impression that you get of me? And I want to hear everyone. Ooh. I want to hear you. What's the first impression that you, and it takes, some people will say tough skin, but it's necessary, especially if we want to be a high level communicator and a high level coach. What is your first impression of me? Okay, let's talk about where that comes from. All right, great. I have a better understanding. Now I know how to start responding and asking the questions or maneuvering in a certain way. If we could start every interaction with the mindset of being more interested, which means I'm going to ask more questions and I'm going to listen more. My grandfather used to say all the time, Dwight, you have one mouth and two ears. Do more listening than talking, Dwight.
Yeah.
You know what you know, find out what other people know. And if we can find out what our student athletes know, if we can find out what our student athletes are thinking, if we can find out what our student athletes desire, we would be much better at coaching them to become their greatest self. And so, again, broken record, ask quality questions, stop assuming, be more interested than interesting, and use your ears more than you use your mouth.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I know we're connected with so many great coaches. I know you are as well. And a lot of these coaches are doing these things that you're saying, and they're killing it. And that's why they're killing it, because they're doing these things. There might be some coaches out there, especially maybe like a new coach, a young coach, that's thinking, this is a lot. Like I'm just trying to win games. I'm trying to communicate, the X's and O's to my players. Yeah. And I need to do all of this, but I think it's a necessity. Like, I think if you want to be a coach, you hate to shrug your shoulders and say, like, it is what it is, but I mean, it is what it is. If you want to be a great coach,
facts,
and you want, like you said, you want to impact the lives of human beings.
Come on.
This is what's required. And this is why coaches get so, that's why they're so tired. They're exhausted at the end of the day, because it's not just breaking down plays and watching film. It's investing into people. And of course, if you're doing it right, you're going to be exhausted, but that passion keeps you going, right? Like
100%. It's one of the things that I say when I'm talking to principals or school districts, that their outcome is student achievement. That's what they want. Yeah. I say, well, you're not going to get student achievement unless you get student engagement.
Yeah, right.
So it's the same thing with a coach. You want them to achieve at the things that you have for them, then engage with them in such a way that now they feel like, oh, I have a connection with you. I have a connection with the philosophy. I have an understanding of it. I believe in it. I believe in you. You are our leader. Okay, boom. Now that I have this, now that I'm engaged and now that I'm connected, now let's move into the direction that you want me to move into. And if we can start with that piece, even if you're a new coach, just engage. And I know it sounds like fluff, but that's the foundation of any relationship. Yeah. Any relationship. So yes, engagement leads to achievement.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on this too. So one of the coaches I've been connected with over the years through Character Combine and still connected now is Coach Cody Norman, who was the girls varsity basketball coach at Laguna Creek High School. Congrats, shout out to Coach Norman, because he was just named the Coach of the Year by SACB.
Okay,
and had an incredible run this season in the playoffs and all of that. But the thing I love and respect about Coach Norman so much is that when I first met Coach Norman, I believe he was at Manteca, and then he bounced over to, I think, Pleasant Grove, and then ended up at Laguna Creek. But he had a lot of losing seasons. Like you had mentioned, your 0-14 team, how they were 0-14 prior to you getting there. He had a lot of, tough seasons, but I don't think it never shook him. Like he always came in and communicated positivity, always communicated character development, always was that positive figure in his athletes' lives. And I love seeing him succeed now, because he was able to continue to, just get better and better. And then now he's, winning section titles and Coach of the Year. So it's awesome to see. But I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there that's like, hey, it's cool if you're winning. It's cool if you're having a successful program, but how do you continue to positively communicate effectively
Yeah.
when you're in a losing situation? Because, I'm sure we've all been there. I've been on losing teams. It's frustrating, and I'm sure it's tough to show up to practice or your games every single day, knowing that, hey, just honestly, we're probably going to get blown out again because, we're competing against teams that are stronger, faster, better.
Right.
You still have to show up and communicate, because you're not just showing up to, get blown out every day. Like, you still have to give your athletes value every single day. So what are some like pieces of advice or tips you would have for a coach who's maybe in that season of life right now where like, man, it's gonna be another 20-0 game. Yeah. And I'm not looking forward to it, but I got to go out here. Like, what are your tips for someone in that situation, how they communicate?
Think about that situation as a life lesson, and see how many life lessons you can pull out of that. Right there. There's so many. My greatest growth as a person, and even as an athlete, did not come when I was winning or at the top of the mountain.
Yep.
My greatest growth came when I made mistakes, when I didn't do something. My greatest growth as a point guard did not come with just me doing everything right, my in and out, my crossover. It came when I made 2 turnovers, and I had to think about, what was I thinking to make those 2 turnovers? Where was I looking at where I was going to throw the ball? Okay, well, Dwight, I need to change that up. And so what I would say to any coach in that situation, find as many life lessons as you can within that. Because again, if you're the type of coach that desires to see great human beings, then these life lessons will go far beyond the sport that you're coaching. And that's the biggest thing that I can say is, 1, just find life lessons, but 2, keep it fun. Yeah. And keep it enjoyable. Again, be interested. How can we be interested in how our student athletes are viewing this, right? It's one thing as a coach, like, oh my God, we're getting ready to get blown out. But maybe the student athletes are viewing it as something different, like, oh, this is preparation, right, for something bigger. But it's always identifying, how can I keep this enjoyable? How can I be interested? How can I show some life lessons? But here's the biggest piece. A coach won't do this if the coach's heart posture is only about winning.
Yeah.
It's very challenging, very difficult, almost impossible for a coach who is only about winning to see the value in the valley.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing. There's so much value in the valley. There's so much courage when you're low. There's so much discipline that can be built. There's a different perspective, right? Our perspective drives our performance, literally. How we view what we do impacts how we do what we do. So if we view this as a losing season, that means you're only thinking about the W's and the L's. You get to define what a losing season means. That's where it comes back to effective communication. What is your definition of a losing season? Does it mean that we didn't win any games or win enough games? Or can I flip that and go, you know what? This is still a winning season because my kids that I'm coaching, or the people that I'm coaching, they're feeling better about themselves. They have more self-esteem. The camaraderie is on a high level. They're being more respectful to each other, to their families, to myself, to the referees. Like, we need to start defining what winning and losing looks like, especially when it comes into this sports arena, because we can feel like, oh, we have a losing season. But in life, right, we have to still identify, how can I find the win? More importantly, how can I find the gratitude? That's where I want to go with this real quick. If we can help our student athletes just be grateful for the fact that they are able to play the sport that they're playing. There's kids who would love to be playing that sport. We can find gratitude in just playing it, it's hard to look at it as a losing anything.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
I had a couple other questions. I'm not even going to ask them, man. That's a perfect place to end this thing.
Yeah, man.
Before we get out of here, obviously I want to know where people can follow you.
Yeah.
Website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. But anything else you have? What do you have coming up? I know you have some big things. So I want you to share that a little bit.
Big stuff. So I shared with your listeners on the other podcast yesterday that I will have a book coming out by the end of this year. So be on the lookout for that. It's all about effective communication, because here's what I believe: effective communication can change any situation. And if you feel like that is not the case, fight me about it. But don't really fight me, because I'm too positive for that. The other piece is,
you did do karate though. You did do karate, like you said at the beginning. So he's ready.
And I am still good at it. So
hey. You've been warned. Don't mess with Dwight.
and then the other big piece, Josh, is my online course is out right now. And so I have an online course called Hacking Your Relationships Like a Pro. Everything we've been talking about today. And the subtitle is Building Bridges Instead of Barriers in All of Your Relationships: the community relationship, the student athlete relationship, the family relationship, the referee relationship, your own intrapersonal relationship. And so make sure you tap into that. You can go to my Instagram. That's at Dwight Taylor SR. Just click the link in the bio. It'll take you there. Hopefully Josh can throw it in the show notes for this, wherever you're watching it. But I'm excited about this course, because I truly believe that if you got any value out of what I was talking about today, this course is going to take it to a new level. So more things in store, but those are the two things that I would love for people to know about.
Perfect. So definitely go follow Dwight, check out all that. Definitely encourage you guys to check out the course, because like Dwight said, and I don't think I said this yesterday, or I thought about it yesterday, but it's an amazing course, because you're not just providing a course. Hey, if you want to be a more effective communicator as a coach, buy this course, but then like all these other aspects of life, it's not like, hey, if you want to be have a better marriage or parent, buy this course. It's literally how to be an effective communicator in any and every area of life. So you can buy this course as a coach, but it's also going to affect your life as a
100%
member,
100%
job. So that's a really cool aspect of this whole thing. So if you guys are interested, do it, because you won't regret it, and you'll just be a better communicator in every aspect. So
100%.
Man, as always, man, we appreciate your time. We appreciate the words of encouragement and motivation. And man, this is just awesome. We always appreciate it. And I just want to say too, man, I appreciate you because you give me so many sound bites. It makes my job so easy. When I promote this thing, it's like sometimes, no disrespect to anybody. I've done over 200 podcasts between all three podcasts I've done. And there are some, nobody on this podcast, but there have been other podcasts where it's like, I'm gonna have to really struggle to find a sound bite, but never the case with Dwight. It's always, man, how do I choose just 2 or 3? Man. So appreciate you,
Josh.
Absolutely,
man. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to doing bigger, better, and greater. And let's keep doing what we do. But hey, keep this up, because people may not know you've been doing the podcasting for a while now. Yeah. And you continue to just elevate and get better and better. And so, man, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and speak to your listeners.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.